Hello and welcome to the Law Deals podcast, where we discuss law firm succession plans, profitable law partnerships, and law firm purchases and sales. I'm your host, Ed Alexander. I've practiced transactional business law for 30 years, have my own practice, Alexander Business Law, and am a principal with Fitzgibbon Alexander, a business intermediary firm. We're on a mission to make sales of law firms commonplace so you can enjoy your practice and your life. Hello, and welcome to the Law Deals podcast, where we explore the ins and outs of law firm succession planning, partnerships, purchases, and sales, and the business of law. I'm your host, Ed Alexander. Today, I'm joined by Tim Semelroth, a personal injury attorney and partner at RSH Legal in Iowa. Tim is the first Iowa attorney board certified in trucking accident law by the National Board of Trial Advocacy. He's a past president of the Iowa Association for Justice and serves on several prestigious legal boards. Tim and I know each other through Great Legal Marketing, and I'm thrilled to have him share his insights on law firm acquisitions and community-based marketing. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks for the invitation. I always learn a lot when we're in a mastermind together, Ed, and so it's great to be able to be part of this show.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so as someone who has acquired law firms, I thought you could offer invaluable insight to the audience on a number of factors involved in acquiring law firms. So why don't you start us off with how you first started acquiring law firms?
Well, it wasn't something that I set out to do. It was a situation where our firm wanted to diversify. And so we decided to get into a new practice area to supplement what we were already doing, Social Security disability. And within a few months of letting the world know that we were going to do that, the biggest Social Security disability firm in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, reached out to us and said, "Hey, looks like you're coming into our space. Would you just like to buy us?" And so that was my initial exposure to purchasing a law firm.
That's fantastic. So it kind of fell into your lap. So what was the first reaction when they contacted you and said, "Buy us"?
Well, it was good because I had a mindset that was developed through people like Dan Kennedy or Ben Glass to be open to opportunities. And so I had heard enough listening to podcasts and recordings and things like that about how this can be a great opportunity. So it was actually really exciting because all these things that I had learned about, I had a chance to test them out and put them into practice.
Nice. So walk us through that acquisition. We're not asking for any numbers, but just kind of walk us through how that came to pass. So they reached out to you. What's the next thing that happened?
Well, the first step was sitting down and saying, okay, this is the information that I'm going to need. As a nice Iowan, it's sort of odd to say to somebody, it's like, okay, show me your books. I mean, that's not the sort of thing that you talk about at picnics in the summertime, right? And so, I made clear, it's like, listen, I'm going to need to know this about your finances. And it was several really detailed discussions about just how that firm was run and what its finances were. And luckily, because of my involvement in Great Legal Marketing, I was able to reach out to other GLM members who did Social Security disability and say, "Hey, this is what I think I need to be asking, but what do you think is important?" And so we got into, average fee per case and where their cases were coming from and how long it was taking to go from, the case being signed up to when the fee could be expected to come in. And so it was a very, very detailed financial discussion was really the first step.
So essentially the way I would characterize that is your due diligence review. So you go in, the finance piece is important, but what you did over and above that, which really is fantastic because it wasn't a practice area that you're in. You're looking for an expert in that practice area to say, "Hey, what about this that I should know that I don't know to ask the right question about?" So perfect. That's great. So you do your due diligence. You obviously liked what you saw. And then you went back to them. Now, for who first proposed a price?
I'm trying to think back. I think that I was the one who suggested a price based upon the, what I understood about their current caseload. So my mindset was it had to pay for itself based upon the cases that were currently in the pipeline. But the advantage to my firm was going to be how we could leverage the connections, the reputation, everything like that. So it was something where I knew, okay, we can make money if I pay you this. But what I also knew was where I was really going to make money was based upon leveraging everything else that came with the practice besides the cases.
And so all of those assets, which to me are the real assets, I mean, that's really what you want, right? Is that it's the mailing list, it's the relationships in the community, it's the name and the goodwill that comes along with that name. Was there nothing attached to that at all in the terms of the purchase price? You just got that as an add-on?
Yes. I mean, this was not the world's most sophisticated negotiation. And so, he was nearing the end of his career. He had some staff members that he was hoping to find a home for, out of loyalty to them. He was interested in the final price. And so the good news was all the rest of the assets were things that were important to me, but frankly, were not that important to him. And so, whether it was you're going to this is years ago. So you're going to keep your listing in the yellow pages for this amount of time. And, your phone number is going to get transferred to our phone number and your URL is going to get transferred to our website. But that was, of all of those things, I think the only thing that caused heartburn for him actually was realizing that his name was going to stay in the yellow pages for like 2 years after the purchase price. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's interesting. In Florida, we have a rule that you can't use the name of an attorney who's not with the firm in the name of the firm or frankly, in any of the advertising, right? So when you took this on, I guess there was a rule in Iowa that would allow you to do that as part of the retirement, or at least a rule that didn't prohibit you from as part of his retirement.
Right. And so it wasn't a yellow page ad, right? So just to be clear, it was just a listing. And so, his law license wasn't going to lapse at the moment that the transaction took place, but it was, everything came to us. And so that was, we were always very clear. We weren't claiming that he was still handling cases, but we felt comfortable based upon the listing that was within the ethical rules.
That's great. From our standpoint, what we end up doing is having the retiring lawyer act as an counsel to the acquiring firm. Right. So that overcomes that problem there. So now you acquire it. I guess his office became your office in the different location. So was it within the town that you're in, or was it a separate location?
It was within the town. We didn't take the physical space.
Okay.
That we took a staff member, we took his cases, obviously URL, the phone number, the list. And that's the great thing about Social Security disability compared to some other practice areas is, the clients keep getting checks if you're successful, right? So one of the things that I thought was really important to negotiate was he wrote a letter that obviously, we ghost wrote that went out on his letterhead introducing all of his past clients to us and vouching for us, to the extent that they had any issues with their cases going forward or any friends or family who would need those sort of services that he was personally recommending them to us. And so that was the first exposure that his list got to us, was that letter from him on his letterhead. And then we quickly transitioned to putting them onto our law firm print newsletter list. And so one of the biggest benefits is, we added, probably over 1,000 people to our mailing list when we bought his practice.
That's fantastic. So I think the key takeaway there for the audience really is that, in going forward with your practice, if you're thinking about selling, even in 20 years, it's maintaining that list, the list of email addresses, but more importantly, as you just said, a list of physical addresses where you're constantly mailing to them monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly, if you can't do monthly or bi-monthly, but constantly in communication with them about what's going on in your firm. And I know you guys are expert at that.
Well, but we weren't always experts, and that's where it can feel daunting. And that's where I always think of the old adage about, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. And that's, I had been in practice for at least 8 years before we really started trying to be serious about maintaining our client list. And if I could go back in time, that would be the thing that I would change, is that I wish that as a brand new lawyer, somebody had said to me, get the mailing address of everybody that you interact with, and because that's going to be your most valuable asset. Because, as everybody knows, all other things being equal, people want to do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And hopefully, if you've done legal work for somebody, they fall into that category.
Right. So they know, like, and trust you. And at the same time, they remember who you are, right? Because you're constantly communicating. You're showing them you're a human, not just, a lawyer out there with legal books and in the office, that type of thing. So excellent. All right. So you bring the firm on. What kinds of issues did you have in the transition? Did it go very smoothly? Were there bumps in the road? And if there were bumps, what were they?
That first one went very smoothly. And the reason why is because, like I said, we were just getting started in that practice area. So we had staff already ready to go, to take over those cases, to bring them into our system. And then we got, like I said, his right-hand staff person who ended up working for us for several years, who came over. And so she was this perfect bridge, right, between his practice and our practice. And so because of that, it went very well. Now, since that time, we have bought other practices, and some of the stumbling blocks have been, do you have people who have the capacity to integrate that practice into yours? So we've been busy, right? But there's an opportunity, and so you take it, and then you realize, oh gosh, we don't really have the capacity to do everything as well as we'd like to in terms of integrating the new practice area in, or hey, we're bringing in this new firm, but the lawyer wants to stay involved, and so now you have a culture thing that needs to be negotiated, right? Because most people who want to sell their practice are in the back nine, right, of their legal career. And so they have already developed the systems that work best for them. And so if they're coming in as part of the deal, then you really need to negotiate on the front end, like what you're going to expect from them in terms of how they're going to use your systems, your software, the buy into your culture.
I mean, it's a fantastic point because, you're dealing with a mindset, right? And so somebody who has a successful practice, they are typically what I would call a dominant type personality. So they've made all the decisions, they've created the practice that they want. And now all of a sudden they've got to come to your systems after they sell them. And when I really counsel sellers, I'm always telling them that 12 months is a magical number. Unless you have some kind of fortitude that says you're going to go 24 or 36 months, you just in your mind have to keep that it's going to be 12 months. And by the end of that 12 months, you're going to be mad at the buyer because they've changed things that you thought were so important to the practice. And you just have to remember, you got to check and they got the practice, and that's the way it goes. And then it's time to move on.
Absolutely. And you have to get over, if you're a seller, you have to get over the pride in how you got to where you are, because people are going to do things differently. And if you take every change that the seller makes as a personal insult that you didn't do it right, then it becomes very uncomfortable for both sides. And so when you're getting ready to sell your practice and you decide that you're going to be part of it, you pretty much have to leave your ego at the door. And like you said, remember the reward for you is the check that you're getting, not a bunch of people saying that, hey, you were so smart and you did everything right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you've done this many times. How many times have you done this?
Gosh, 4 times. Yeah. But it's not, a lot of times it's just a particular lawyer, right? And maybe they were solos and you're bringing them in. But, what we found is we look at acquisition as an opportunity to either A, get talent. That's driven most of them is that, hey, we have the opportunity to work with somebody who we have a lot of respect for. So we want to bring them under our umbrella. Or B, it's a practice area that maybe we don't have expertise in. So we're paying for the opportunity to be able to work and grow in that space. Or C, geographic location. It's like, hey, here's a firm that's established in this area and we're going to, we want to move into that market.
Yeah. So the first one I would characterize as an acqui-hire. Right. So that's really what it amounts to. And obviously the key issue there is getting that employment agreement right so that it's tied with the purchase so that if for some reason it doesn't work out, you're not stuck on the purchase without the purpose of the purchase. Right. That second one ultimately is expanding the practice outside of your current practice area. And then the third one being geographic expansion. Have you done any where you acquired a firm of a retiring attorney within the current practice area that you have?
No, the attorneys who were within our practice area who've joined us, they've stayed with us. So it hasn't been something where there's been just a straight handoff of their tape.
Got it. Okay. So you gave us 2 important lessons. Do you have any other important lessons for this?
Okay. So make sure you have the capacity to give to the process. Let's see. I think that knowing what you're buying is probably the last lesson, and that's important to keep in mind because there are always going to be bumps in the road. And so if you realize it's like, hey, remember, we're doing this because we want this new expertise, that tends to be a mantra for us. So in a situation where maybe we've hired somebody because they bring a certain expertise to the firm, you run into the growing pains that you're always going to have. It's helpful to remember it's like, hey, this is why we did this. This is, we're still moving in that direction. And this is just a bump in the road towards the ultimate goal.
Right. So really 2 lessons there, I would say, in that. The first is you got to identify your purpose before you go into the deal. And I always counsel clients to write that purpose down because as you're going through the negotiation, your mind can play tricks on you and change that purpose. And you can start to give up the original purpose, which you don't intend to do. So it's always nice to come back to that. And if there's a negotiation, go back to it and say, am I still achieving this purpose if I agree to what the seller now wants, right? The second is that this is not a smooth, get it done process. It was always funny to me, like remember the movie Pretty Woman, and in one of the lines he says, "Okay, well that's it, just get it done." And he walks out of the room like, "Yeah, no, that's not the way it works at all. You're involved in this from the first minute to the end in there. Don't expect it to go smooth. There are going to be hiccups. There are hoops you're going to have to jump through. There are things you're going to have to deal with that are going to come up that you're not expecting." So, great, excellent point to keep in mind there. So in terms of where you're at now, are you actively looking to identify potential? If so, how do you go about doing that?
I don't know that we're looking to acquire a particular firm. There are geographic areas that we're interested in, and we have laterals that we've hired who have connections to those areas. And so I think probably in the short term, our goal would be to build practices for them in those areas. But, it gets back to the mindset thing. I mean, it's like opportunities come up and our best acquisitions, our best lateral hires oftentimes come just because your eyes are open and you're aware. So, you see maybe a lawyer reach an inflection point in their career and you think, hey, they might be ready for a move. Or, if somebody approached me, like I just said no to an acquisition within the past 3 months. And we had several discussions and it was a very profitable firm. And, there were a lot of pluses and to it, but he was very frank with me about how his firm ran, and it became apparent to me that, he was the engine. And there were other red flags, but the biggest thing was the reason why his firm was so successful was because of his personality, his connections, his force of will. And it became apparent to me that we couldn't recreate that or replicate that. And so as good as his books looked, it just wasn't a good fit for us.
That's really interesting, because there are two really issues that come up there. And I think what you're getting to is, number one, if I am the center of attention, if I am everything, right? So everybody has to come to me to make the decision. I have to do the most important work. All of those pieces, the firm becomes you, and it's very difficult to separate that out from you, right? The other thing that I find in those situations is that the attorney is working more hours than they should be working, and probably on many more things than they should be working, right? So they're not delegating. Without that delegation and then the staff to be capable of performing those services, you really own a job, you don't own a firm.
Right. And you can sort of see it, particularly in the litigation side, because that's what I'm most familiar with. But when you realize that all the other people who work at the firm all work to support the owner, what makes them valuable is how they support the owner. And that's just not a situation where I'm comfortable. Because the owner, the whole reason he's talking to me is because he's looking to retire or slow down. And in that situation, I'm not sure what I'm buying.
Yeah, no, fair comment, absolutely. Because when they go, it's very, very difficult to transition that goodwill. And basically, you'd have to find somebody to sit in the same seat and do the same thing. And that person is typically going to want to be an owner. So you could sell that, I guess, to a solo, right? Somebody who literally wants to come in and do it, but you're not going to sell it to a larger firm that's looking to acquire practice. Good. All right. Well, I'd like to I wanted to switch topics on you, because at the Great Legal Marketing Summit, you had a presentation on the community-based marketing that you did. And really, I thought this was so valuable. I know this is on the business of law side, but you have the setup specifically for event sponsorship in the community. And maybe you could kind of go over that for our audience. Tell us a little bit how you approach that.
So our philosophy is, we want to be contributors to the communities that we're in, but it's not just about writing checks. And so when a sponsorship opportunity comes up, we go through a pretty systematic process to decide whether or not it's a good fit for us. And so, we want it to be a win-win. I mean, obviously the win for whatever the activity is they're getting our money, and sometimes they're getting our time. And so, we have to make sure that it's going to be a win for us too. And so it can be a win for us in a couple of ways. First off, it's got to be consistent with our brand. And that's a challenge. I'm sure every law firm owner has employees, and their kids are in 100 things, and maybe they're involved in a lot of community things. And so as our firm grew, we decided it's like, hey, we can't write a check to every good cause that is important to a member of our team. And so, we developed some basic criteria, like, does it support the legal system? Does it support the people who typically hire us? And if not, I'm happy to write a check out of my own checking account to support a little league team or something like that. But in terms of when we're using firm sponsorship, it's got to support our mission and fit our brand. Then the question is, well, I don't want it to be a one and done thing. I want to look and see how can we leverage this to maybe add more people to our mailing list for our general newsletter. Is it something that we are going to be able to get good press for? Is it something that we can promote in our social media? And so we're always looking for that. And so when somebody reaches out to us and says, would you like to sponsor this? We go through that process, and then we come up with a wish list of what we want. And it's often just like we talked about at the beginning with the lawyer not appreciating what was truly valuable to us during that first sale. Oftentimes the people who are coming to us to sponsor things don't appreciate what is important to us. And so they have no problems giving it to us. It's like, hey, I need a link from your website to my website. Hey, I'm going to want this picture. I'm going to bring in a photographer to do this beat, or videographer to record this B-roll. And normally it's a list of probably about, 5 or 6 things that we want in exchange for, the check. And I've just never had a situation where somebody said no.
Yeah, and I always like the one where it's, we need a picture of us handing the big check, right? So we got that. And then I know on some of them, you've done sign up specifically with email addresses to get them onto your e-newsletter list. Now, I'm interested, do you convert them over to the print mailing list?
Yes. So how we do that is if it's going to be something with a good crowd, we say one of the things that we want to do is we want to sponsor a raffle. And so then, we have a table set up and we have whatever the item is. When we sponsored a race to support crime victims in our city, the raffle item was a Theragun. When we sponsored the Boy Scout Merit Badge University, the raffle was the portable stoves that Snoop Dogg endorses. And so it's a decent item, it's probably, a couple $100. And the deal is that you've got to fill out a raffle ticket. And, that involves giving us your address and your email address. And of course, if you win, there's going to be a nice picture of somebody from our firm giving you and so that has worked really well. People understand that, hey, if I have the chance to win this thing that has value, that I'm going to turn over my mailing address.
So you collect a couple hundred pieces of contact information for everybody, and then you add them to your print newsletter so everybody gets on that?
Right. And the reason why that works is because our general print newsletter is not focused on legal. Right. It's more general interest information. So for listeners of a certain generation, I call it, it's got to fit in well in a Reader's Digest. It's got to be, consumer information or a recipe or photographs of people in the community. I mean, that makes up anywhere between 75 to 80% of our typical monthly newsletter. And then only 20-25% is used for an article about some area of the law that we practice in. And so when you get this, we also try to time it so that the first newsletter they receive is the one that has pictures from the event that they were at. So they're not getting this newsletter from a lawyer and saying, who the heck is this and how did I end up with this? Yeah. They're like, oh yeah, there's the conference that I went to and so they see that picture, but then they're on the list, right? And they're going to stay on the list until they call us and tell us that they don't want to receive it anymore, or we get word that they moved.
Nice, very nice. So what's your mailing cycle for your newsletter? Is it monthly?
It's monthly. And so that's our general newsletter. We also in 2024 started a newsletter specifically for other attorneys. And both of these, there's the print newsletter that's monthly, but we also do an e-newsletter to the same group that covers the same general things.
Excellent. And you find is that a primary source of business for you? How does that work? Do you track it?
So here's how we track it. We are primarily a personal injury and disability firm. We track our new cases based upon, we put them into one of 3 buckets. Either they come in from general marketing, whether that's online stuff or TV or outdoor. We have attorney referrals. And then the third bucket is word of mouth. And so the budget for the newsletter goes into the word of mouth bucket, because everybody who has ever got a guide from us, a consumer guide, who's ever been a client, anybody who for any reason we'd have a mailing address, they're in that newsletter bucket. And so what we do is we just track, are we getting more word of mouth referrals? So non-lawyers and not people who are responding to direct marketing, is that increasing? And it does. when we first started doing this, we tried to do like a special URL or a special phone number that we would just put on the print newsletter. But the reality is that it's more holistic than that. And so as long as our word of mouth new cases are moving in the right direction, then we'll keep spending the money on the newsletter.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I guess since there's no direct tie, basically what you're looking at is what are we spending on that bucket versus what that bucket is producing. And you look at it in the aggregate and make sure that it does do that. And then the acquisitions help with that because you're dumping in hundreds or thousands of names into that at once as part of that. And then you're getting the letter from the seller who is also proving, or I guess imagine in the acquihires, the seller saying, hey, I'm joining forces and promoting the firm RSH that way. But then in the sellers, as you indicated before, you get a letter that says, hey, these are the guys to use going forward. So, great. Excellent.
With the acquihire, the thing I want to point out is, so when we bring a new lawyer in, we always do in that general newsletter a meet our new lawyer, and it has pictures of them with their family or their dog, action shots. And we always make sure that when a new lawyer comes into the firm, we say, okay, is there anybody that you would like to be on this newsletter list? Friends, family, past clients, whatever. And then we make sure that the first newsletter that new batch receives is the one that has the article featuring that new lawyer. So again, people understand why they're getting the first one.
It makes sense. So they look at it and as you said before, who is this firm? Why am I getting this? Yes. Perfect. So anything else to add on either the law firm acquisition side or the community-based marketing side or word of mouth?
Well, what I would say is that if you can find a way to get an ROI on the community side, that is the most enjoyable and fulfilling checks that you write to get new clients. I mean, I never get a warm feeling when I send my, when my credit card gets dinged by Google. I never feel fulfilled when I send a check to the local television station. One of the things that our firm is very committed to is the Iowa mock trial program, both at the middle school and high school level. We have lawyers who coach it. In fact, 4 lawyers in our firm are people who I met when I coached them in mock trial as middle school or high school students. And one of the things that we did a couple of years ago that my son who's in college helped with is we created an online program called Mock Trial 101 that has video lessons to teach teachers and students about how to be successful in the mock trial activity. And we were just at the state middle school tournament, and I was there with 2 lawyers from my firm, and all of a sudden this teacher walked up to me and said, you're not going to believe it, and we had never met this teacher. She came up and she said, my team is freaking out right now because they recognize all of you from Mock Trial 101 and they can't believe that you're here in person. And so it was a cute moment, but it also shows the power of community involvement. I mean, these are, there are now thousands of students who have gone through this online course, which has our firm branding on it. And at least in that very small corner of the world, they thought we were celebrities.
Nice. Very nice. So give us the URL so the audience can check it out.
Is Mock Trial 101.
That's perfect. Excellent. Well, very nice. So thank you, Tim. I appreciate it. How can listeners get in touch with you?
LinkedIn would be perfect. If you look me up, Tim Semelroth on LinkedIn. I post regularly, and that's actually where we get most of the substance for our attorney newsletter. Is I try to post on law firm management topics, CLE topics. And so if you need a guy in Iowa or you just want to get on our newsletter, please reach out to me through LinkedIn.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Great content and really appreciate your time.
Thank you. It was a great conversation as always.